Welcome everyone to week number 7 in Science 200. We just have this week and next week, and then you will be finished and you'll have a couple of weeks off for the winter break, and then you'll be back to it in January, and so will I. So let's see what we've got going on. Last week you finished up your paper, so you have researched your topic thoroughly, hopefully. You figured out all kinds of information about it, everything from GMOs to ocean acidification to electric vehicles to nuclear power to dark matter to, oh, there's so many topics that y'all had, climate change, global warming, that sort of thing. So you finished up your paper, you've done all your research, you figured out who your audience is and how you're going to communicate with them. You came up with a big question to ask. You came up with a smaller question to ask, your hypothesis, which then could be tested through experimentation. And you tried to think like a natural scientist during this process. So I hope that you've learned a lot about the scientific process. This week, you've got some work to do in Chapter 7 in your web text. It's all about the communication of science, and there's a really good scientific article in there about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and you can tell that it's a science article because there's a tremendous amount of data in it. There's all kinds of numbers, and if you put numbers in your article, in your writing, in your explanation, then you have to be able to back up the numbers, right? If you're looking at opinion pieces, I'll give you this one piece of advice. You're not going to see a bunch of data. You will not. But in science, you will, because the data drives the opinions that you have, not really the opinions, but the conclusions that you reach when you're doing any type of research. So look for that. Look at how much data there is in that article. And we've already been doing some of this because you looked at the different types of communication, everything from research articles that are published in journals to news articles to everything in between, and there is a lot in between. So you're going to evaluate communication by reading that article and answering some questions about it. We want to talk about peer review for a second, having to do with scientific work. This is a tremendously important part of the scientific process. And I will tell you, it's not always easy to do this. So I'll give you an example of it. From time to time, you as a scientist are asked to review someone's work. And I was asked to do that. I was going to a meeting, an association, American Society for Microbiology Association, and they asked a big group of us who were going to a particular session to review an article that was going to be published. And so we went in there. Supposedly we had all read this article, and we had given it thought and looked it over. And so we were all sitting in there, and the person who was running this particular session said, well, are there any concerns about this? And everybody was going. Now, the person who was publishing this was fairly well known amongst us and very well thought of. And so they said, well, are there any concerns? And everybody was going, no. Might change a word here, a word there. And I got to thinking, I had seen something. Yeah, the data table, the columns in the data table were completely switched. And so when you read the data, it made it look like the opposite effect was going on. But I knew that the column headings had been changed because otherwise none of this made any sense. So I raised my hand. The little podunk me from York Technical College in South Carolina raised my hand. I said, can we take a look at this table, this data table that's in here? And I explained which one it was. And I said, now take a look at the headings. I think there's something wrong here. I think that the column titles have been switched. And the person who had written it looked over at me and her eyes got really, really big. She said, "Oh my goodness, they are switched. I did not see that." And she looked around the room and she said, "And nobody else saw that either." And I'm going, okay, that's part of the peer review process. You catch little things like that when you do the review process. Plus, just think if she had published that work, how embarrassed she would be because somebody else would catch her. I'll tell you that right now. Somebody else would have caught her. And then that sort of would have discredited her work. So that's part of the peer review process. You put it out there, you put your work out there for other people to view, to digest, to think about, to compare to what they've known and what they've seen. And then people will make comments about it. People will say, they'll publish their own work and they'll say, "This is not what we got in our research, and so we don't understand how that person over there could have gotten these results." Peer review is a tremendously important part of the scientific process. It not only keeps everyone honest, but it also makes sure that you're coming to the correct conclusions when you are doing any type of scientific work. Because you can be as honest as you can be and then come to the wrong conclusion, or not have considered everything. That's another thing that people do. They get so focused, with blinders on, for their particular topic, their particular set of experiments, that they forget to think about all the extra little things that could be going on. So peer review is terribly important in the scientific process. It's what keeps science science. So I want to stress that, how important it is. All right, so what have you got going on this week? This week, you are going to make a set of speaker's notes for your presentation. So in week 8, you're going to turn in a slide presentation, between 5 to 7 slides, the bulk of the presentation. You can have a title slide, you can have a slide for your references, that sort of thing. But the bulk of your presentation should be about 5 to 7 slides. And it's going to be on your topic, obviously, because that's what you're now an expert in, right? But this week, you're going to turn in speaker's notes. So let me pull up an example right here. So I just, I made a slide. So this was, say, my introduction slide to my topic of ocean acidification. And a couple of things you should look for. You need to have some impact to your slides. Now, we're not talking about your slides this week, but you already have to be thinking about this. For me, if I were doing this, I would have my slides made this week so that I know exactly what I need to write speaker's notes on. So ocean acidification, I've got some bullet points here. You don't want paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of text for your audience to read. And you especially, I cannot emphasize this enough, don't want to have all that text and stand up and read all of it. I can read, he can read, they can read. We don't need you reading it to us. Nobody needs that. I can't stand that. I have seen it many times, but please, no, no, no. So you want to have some bullet points because that's showing your audience what you're going to cover on this slide. Now you see down at the bottom here, right down here, see that little orange arrow? Click to add notes. So your speaker's notes would go right here. So you would write out everything that you would say. Now you can make this in the form of bullet points. Normally, I would use bullet points because I know what I'm going to say. I just have to be reminded to make sure I don't leave anything out. So you can use bullet points. You can have all the words written out, and you can make sure to cover all of that when you're making a presentation. Your audience cannot see that section. You can see it on your computer where the speaker's notes are, but your audience will not see that. So those are reminders to you about what you're going to talk about on each slide. Those are your speaker's notes. So now let me go back to the rubric, because these are the guidelines and the rubric. So the guidelines are the instructions. The rubric is how you're going to get graded. These are the guidelines for your speaker's notes. Like it says, they can be bullet points, they can be paragraphs. 2 to 4 pages, yeah, that makes sense. Just do enough until you get all the information on there. I mean, that's what's important to me. Make sure you have the information there. But it shouldn't be a 10-page thing either. That's ridiculous. You're not going to stand up there and read 10 pages worth of information for 5 to 7 slides. So here are the sections. Okay, I want to point these out. Scientific background. I don't know how that arrow is showing up on your screen. Scientific background. So this is sort of like your introduction, right? Ooh, that sounds familiar. Provide a brief overview of the scientific background for your particular topic. And your question. So you got to have your big question in here too. You're going to explain some of the science, the background information. So if you're talking about GMOs, you have to tell your audience what a GMO is, especially if you're talking to the general public. Genetically modified organism. You have to explain it to them. And the fact that you're taking an organism and you're changing the genes in it to show particular traits that you want it to show, right? So you're doing some of the background explanation. If you're talking about electric vehicles, okay, that's really nice, but how does an electric vehicle run? Some people are not going to know that. So explain it. Ocean acidification. People kind of know what acid is, but do they really? Not so sure. So you want to explain that and the basics of how it works. So the excessive carbon dioxide in the environment, in the atmosphere, is diffusing into the ocean water. And it's sort of like carbonation in a soda. And this makes an acidic environment, right? So scientific background. Your audience. Explain how this particular topic impacts your audience. How many times have I said before? You have to grab your audience's attention. You have to tell them why this is important. Because a lot of people, if you say ocean acidification, they're going to go, okay, big deal. I don't really care about that. I care about buying my Christmas presents. I care about going to visit my in-laws, which I really don't want to do, And they're going, ocean acidification, I don't know anything about that. I don't care about it. Explain how this impacts them. Explain why they should be interested in this. Okay, that's very important. Empirical evidence. Here is where your sources come in. You're going to explain the scientific information that you have learned about this topic. If you're talking about GMOs and the health effects of GMOs, you're going to explain, because none of you have found, I'll guarantee you that there have been proven negative effects from consuming GMOs as far as your health goes. So you're going to explain what you have learned from your sources, empirical evidence, what you've gathered from your scientific sources about a particular topic. Personally, how does this affect you personally? Why is this a passion of yours? Why is it important to you? Investigation. Show how your thinking has been changed on this particular topic as you have done this research. Okay, your message, this is just how you're communicating. This is not a slide. Your message is how you are conveying the message to your audience. So something else that's really important about slides is that you have to grab people's attention. You have to have graphics. If all you do is write words on slides, no one in their right mind will be interested in that. You have to grab their attention. You have to pull at their heartstrings. You have to show impact on the world, on them. If you're doing a presentation on plastic pollution, you want to show those gigantic mats of floating plastic that are out there in the ocean. just how many cubic acres they are in different locations around the world, where all this plastic is just coming together and floating like basically plastic islands out in the ocean. You want people to see an image like that because that gives impact to your topic of plastic pollution. So convey your message properly by graphics. Now, of course, that's coming up next week, but also with your words, okay? Articulation of your response. You know, you've got to use good English. You got to make sure there's no grammatical errors and all that sort of thing, as you've been doing the whole term. All right, and then, so this is the next to the last week. The last day of this course is Sunday, December the 17th at midnight. That is the last chance that you have to turn in anything in this class. You cannot turn it in on Monday. I cannot put it in there. You can't send it to me and put it in. So make sure you get everything in this course by Sunday, December 17th before midnight. If you are running out of time and you've had some setbacks in this course, which a few of you have, and you're thinking about taking an incomplete or requesting, because that's what we have to do, requesting an incomplete, beware of that. We can do it. However, the requirement is that you have to have completed 70% of the coursework successfully. So that's with an A, B, or C. You can't just have zeros in there. You have to successfully have completed 70% of the work in the course in order for me to turn in a request for you to get an incomplete. I also have to put in the reasons for you wanting this extension of the deadline. The deadline moves it out 1 month. That's it. That's the longest you have. And in that month's period, you have to finish up the work that you have left to do. But realize that it's 70% of the work. You can't have half the course done and request an incomplete because it will not be granted. I'll guarantee you that. I have to sign off on that, and I'm very honest. And so if you don't have 70% completed, I'm not going to check it off, and they will not grant your request. So be aware of that. Just try to get everything in if at all possible. These last couple of assignments, the one for week 7 and the one for especially for week 8, these are big assignments that carry a lot of point values. So please get these in. They're terribly important. You notice that some of the assignments along the way are worth 168 points. That's 168 out of your total of 1,000 points. So these are big assignments, and the couple this week and next week are some of those big assignments. So I want to warn you about that. The deadlines for this week, you only have the one thing due, the speaker's notes, along with the textbook work, of course. And that deadline is Sunday by midnight, as usual. Okay, with that being said, I hope that you have a great week this week. And as always, please let me know, m.sigmon@snhu.edu, if you're having any trouble, any issues, you need some time extensions, whatever it is. Please, 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 please let me know. Okay? I hope that you have a great week.